The Oklahoma Sooners had a big season, and a number of Sooners standouts were honored by the SEC.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. He's Jay Smith of Unfair Sports. I'm John Williams of Sooners Wire. On today's show, we're going to talk about how much the SEC refs really hate the Oklahoma Sooners. Brent Venables being snubbed for all sorts of things. He's not the only one. Several Oklahoma Sooners were snubbed from the all-SEC teams. But, Jay, 10 Oklahoma Sooners received 11 selections to the all-SEC postseason teams, which is crazy considering how this thing was looked at in the preseason to where it's at now. Such a turnaround.
Oklahoma proved that they've got a roster that's built to be one of the top teams in the SEC, something that a lot of teams a lot of fans didn't even fathom. A lot of people in the SEC itself didn't fathom that Oklahoma will be able to build something like this. And here we are. The roster has started to show up. They're getting the accolades that they deserve. When you start looking at some of these here, John, first and foremost, first team All-Americans, you have first team All-SEC, honors. You got Grayson Miller with Tate Sandell and Mason Thomas. Funny thing is, it's like the strongest things that Oklahoma has right now, which is special teams and defense. Yeah. It's right there in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, incredibly well-deserved for Mason Thomas. He was a guy that was a second-team All-SEC performer last year. This year was on a fantastic, having a fantastic season, had 6.5 sacks before he gets injured in the Tennessee game and then misses the final 3 games of the season. But that just goes to show like how well respected he is. And then also consider that he missed half of a game against Auburn.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
the crazy part.
That's the kind of season that Mason Thomas has had. And then you talk about, Tate Sandell. Nobody has more 50-yard field goal attempts than he does. He's made all 7 of them. He leads the SEC in field goal percentage. The dude has just been phenomenal. Grayson Miller is one of the best punters in the country. I think he's 4th in the nation in punts downed inside the 20. Everybody's just putting up numbers at Oklahoma right now.
A lot of people are putting up numbers. I'm kind of surprised that those really the only 3 that ended up first team. But the good thing is that second team decided to up the ante.
What's crazy about that, Jay, is that's still more than Georgia, who had more players selected to all SEC teams than Oklahoma. Georgia only had 2 players on the first team.
Which is wild to me.
Which is wild. They won the SEC and they only had 2 players on the first team.
Had 2. That much talent is dispersed throughout the SEC. That's the reason why. And so when you get to the second team, it elevates, of course. 5 players for Oklahoma make all SEC honors. You got Isaiah Sategna right there in the middle with Taylor Wan for Wu, Peyton Bowen, as well as Ben Anderson, the guy that was snapping it to your 2 special team first teamers. He got out there as well. But Sategna, so far is second in the SEC in receiving yards at 948. So yeah, he's putting up some massive numbers coming in here, transferring from Arkansas. He outdid himself from the year before. And if things work out the way we expect, he should finish the season over 1,000.
Yeah. And what's crazy about that is considering that the Oklahoma passing game just hasn't been super consistent or efficient, or it's had some explosive plays. And that's really where he's made his money, is on the explosive plays. Mm-hmm. But considering that they're not even targeting him at a high rate, he's only getting 6 targets a game generally, and he's still putting up big numbers. Just imagine what would happen if he got 10 targets, 12 targets in a game. I mean, the dude could just seriously go off. And, it's great to see Peyton Bowen getting these accolades after, the first couple of years of his tenure at Oklahoma were just kind of injury laden, just having to battle through nagging things that kept him off the field. and didn't allow him to develop. Well, his first time as a starter, he's an all SEC performer and incredibly well-deserving because he's had such a great season.
Yeah, he has. He's had a really good season. Even I'm going to Sategna in the wide receiver room is crazy. Sategna is number 2 in the conference in receptions this season at 65, where Zachariah Branch is number 1 at 73, in which if you add in the SEC championship game, that's probably where he took the lead there. But Sategna is second in conference in receptions, second in yards, right? That is, to me, just I would have never expected it with the way this season has gone, and he's 4th in touchdowns. So Sategna has been that dude, and he's been one of the best pickups. But back to Peyton Bowen, man, he's been all over the place, making big plays, 2 interceptions. Interception against against Tennessee, and then the interception against LSU to really cap off some big plays that he's done. The 2 big breakups against Bama, right? The breakup against LSU, you're seeing him in a lot of the big moments, and that is what we have hoped to get out of the former 5-star. He's given us that 5-star performance this past season. Then you add in Febechiwewu, who arguably has been your best offensive lineman this season. Like, who can argue against how good he has been this season? He has shown up and shown out. He has given you the McCabe Matauer treatment of second year with Bill beating Bo and become a monster. That is how good Febechiwewu is.
Yeah, he's been great and so good that you could just slide him over to center and really not miss a beat because he's just consistent. He's a really good player. He's a really consistent player. And it's like Bill Parcells, the Hall of Fame NFL coach, used to say, the best ability is availability. Yep. And he's stayed available. And that's what allows you to develop. If you're in and out of the lineup, you're in and out of practice, you're not getting those reps, it makes it really hard to perform and get better and find consistency. And Febechiwewu has done that. He was a finalist for the Bullsworth, which goes to the player that started their career as a walk-on, the best player in the country that started their career as a walk-on. He was a finalist for that. So that just goes to show how well respected he is across the country because of the performance that he's had for Oklahoma's offensive line.
Then you add in there Taylor Wine, who wraps it up. And he just emerged as a monster for this squad. I mean, he's 4th in the conference in tackles for loss, finishing with 14 on the season, which makes him one of the, the foremost terrorists out there at the edge in the SEC. And he's finished with 3.5 sacks on the season. And so, six sacks. Sacks on the season. So he's right behind our Mason at 6.5. He had 6 sacks on the season with his 14 tackles for loss. So that put him at 10th in the conference on sacks. And so he gave you all the stuff you've been hoping for and more this season, especially with R. Mason Thomas being out. You didn't even feel like you missed a beat. Like, a player like R. Mason Thomas is missed, but when you have a player that steps in and he is just as disruptive as R. Mason, you're like, oh, okay, well, I think we'll be all right. And Taylor gave you that. Now, going into this next game against Alabama, there's a chance you have both again. Oh, my goodness. I kind of feel I feel fearful for Alabama in that game.
Just like you talked about with Peyton Bowen, dude, Taylor Wine's played big in big moments.
Former 3-star. He has shown up and shown out. And then you got the third team in there. You got Berger's dad. Shout out to him. Berger's dad gets up there with Eli Bowen, who had the pick 6, of course, and he's got 2 interceptions in the last 4 games. The Bowen brothers actually, which is funny, they have a combined 4 interceptions in the last 4 games. Every game, a Bowen has gotten an interception, and Eli has returned one for a touchdown.
They're saving it for the most important time of the year. But yeah, shout out to Eli Bowen, who's been able to build on a great true freshman year that he had a year ago. Missed all of spring ball for the most part, missed a lot of fall camp, was kind of slow to get integrated into the defense to start the season. But then once he got into the lineup, he never looked back, and he's been awesome. And then Jaron Kanik at tight end, dude, like, how cool is it that Jaron Kanik earned all SEC third team honors at tight end, and it's only been 1 year at the position?
That is
just
the crazy
awesome.
part. That's the crazy part. Yeah. And he was third in the SEC in tight ends and receiving yards at 511. We just got to get that man a touchdown. That should be the goal, is to find a way to get Jaron Kanik a touchdown. And I anticipate that's what John Mateer wants to do for him. But yeah, this dude, he had a year. Jerry Kanak had a year to switch from linebacker to tight end like that and get over 500 yards in receiving. 40 catches, 511 yards, 12 yards a catch. We just need to get him in the end zone, baby. And I think we can, hopefully, against Bama.
He's still a developing player, but what we've seen is you get him the ball and you get him the ball in space and good things happen.
Yep.
You go win that LSU game. Yes, you get the big play on the busted coverage, but who kickstarts that drive? It's 2 throws to Jerry Kanak and the fight that he showed on that second catch to really get that drive moving forward. So shout out to Jerry Kanak. And man, what I love about this is, and this is going a little bit long, but the guys that earned these honors, the R. Mason Thomas, he was a 3-star when Oklahoma offered him, committed to Iowa State, came to Oklahoma, battled injuries his first couple of years before really seeing the field in year 3. Taylor Wine, 3-star, dude that they just talked about ad nauseum about being a junkie for football, just workout warrior, just constantly in the building, trying to do things. You know, all of these guys are under the radar dudes. They weren't like high 4 or 5-star guys that Oklahoma recruited and brought here. And of course they lived up to expectations. No, all of these guys have exceeded expectations.
Yeah. They've been way better than expected.
Every facet, whether it's the kickers, the punter, the long snapper, like everybody, Eli Bowen, remember the talk about Eli Bowen was just, that's an offer for Peyton, the disrespect. But Eli Bowen is showing you that he's just as valuable part of this defense as anybody. So again, that's just a really cool aside to all of that is none of these guys you would have expected to be all SEC performers when they got to Oklahoma necessarily. Now, before the season, you would have had some expectations for some of them, but aside from Peyton Bowen was a 5-star. You had high expectations from him. He's the only one, but there you go.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me that, listen, you go 6-7 in 2023 or 2024, your first year in the SEC, you go 10-2 and make the playoff. And yet our guy, Brent Venables, can't get any love. Come on.
NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes living, live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. So with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump into the moments because the live spreads adjust and the money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as the guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL bets. Live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast. So can you.
Once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the #1 sports podcast network, Locked On. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Sooners with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to Locked On Sooners and go check out the show notes. You can find the link to get you started here at Locked On. The URL is lockedonpodcast.com/everydayer club. Go there to find out more about how you can get ad-free and all access to the Discord. All right, Brent Venables snubbed. What the heck, Jay? This was a guy coming into the season that was on everybody's hot seats. Everybody said, you got to win 9-10 games to save your job. He did all those things, and he can't get any love.
It feels like Brent Venables went and got directly into the Oklahoma standard of getting back to double-digit wins. And because of that, he just kind of gets the, that's a good job, man. You did what you're supposed to do. And truth be told, if you really think about it, the landscape of college football has dramatically changed. And it's changed to where you're starting to see a lot more talent being dispersed. Teams that used to be super dominant aren't as dominant. Still good, just not as dominant. And so for Oklahoma, it's one of those where, Brent Venables came in, he completely changed, he turned things around, and the goal was to get back to the ability of winning double-digit seasons, and we're now back here, but you kind of got some impressive work from others, like Clark Lee over there at Vanderbilt. He's probably going to end up being SEC Coach of the Year. It truthfully probably deserved. Mike Elko may actually even win it as well. I think he's going to be at the top of it because he went 11-1, something that hasn't happened at Texas A&M since the 90s. So there's those moments where you would hope Brent Venables would get recognized, but unfortunately for him, even as someone on everybody's hot seat list, other teams started to do some stuff that was a little bit better because they kind of had a little bit of an easier road.
Like, you got to be kidding me, though. Ryan Day of Ohio State, he won the national championship last year.
Yeah.
So, like, are we that impressed? I mean, and then he lost in the Big Ten championship game. Marcus Freeman, he was in the national championship game last year. Joey McGuire has a roster that is bought and paid for. Like, he should be able to win considering all the NIL dollars that are getting thrown his way.
Yeah, no.
It's
right.
Crazy that Brent Venables can't find his name on a list that includes 12 guys on the Eddie Robinson Coach of the Year finalist list. It's just more and more disrespect for Oklahoma, and they just need to go win this whole thing so that everybody can just shut up.
Yeah, at this point, just get keep the bulletin board material coming, leverage it to your advantage, use it as fuel to the fire, and go out there and be fiery, and go punch people in the face. That's kind of be the most important thing. As they mentioned, hard to kill. They are a squad that is they're very tight-knit family. And this is one of those things. In addition, I mean, we talk about Brent Venables being snubbed. We didn't even get on the dudes that we felt like got snubbed in the SEC stuff. I mean, David Stone, I felt like, or Grayson Halton are players that I felt like should have gotten some sort of recognition. But at the same time, they weren't the top defensive tackles statistically. So I guess I understand why they wouldn't get, recognized at the sacks or anything like that. But you would have thunk, whomst amongst us would have thunk that they would have not even sniffed the third team or in some capacity. But got that Kip Lewis. Magical season for him again, all over the place doing things. He got zero looks, love, or, recognition. So it's like, okay, well, I mean, we lead the country in defensive touchdowns, and we just, for some reason, certain players that in that didn't get looked at, but it's okay. We get it. Let's go put that on the bulletin board. We're going to mark that down. We're going to prepare ourselves going into the next game.
Here's my theory on that, Jay. It's that because they rotate 4 guys at defensive tackle like heavily, and they rotate 4 guys at linebacker pretty heavily, or at least 3, but sometimes 4. It's that all of those guys kind of ate into each other's votes a little bit.
Yeah.
So you might have had 15 coaches voting for all 4 of the Grayson Halton, Dominic Williams, Jaden Jackson, David Stone group, but not enough of them voting for one individual player. And so they those votes marginalized them a little bit, and they didn't get enough. And I can see the same thing at linebacker between Kip Lewis and Owen Heineke, that like they split the votes maybe a little bit, or Kendall Daniels, splitting some of that vote. So I'm sure he would have probably classified as a linebacker in the voting, situation. But I could see some of that, where, hey, we got, Clark Lee voting for Grayson Halton, or, Steve Sarkisian voting for Jaden Jackson, or whatever. So that, I think that probably is more of what happened. Whereas at defensive end, like, who your dudes are at defensive end, who your dudes are at cornerback and at safety. Like, there's no question about it. At defensive tackle and linebacker, you've got so many dudes that you can play so many guys and they can all eat.
Yeah, there's a lot of options when it came to that. So it makes sense in that capacity. Yeah, it's but at the same time, you would have thunk that Oklahoma would have got a little bit more recognition on that. But
I think they just need to come back next year.
Well, I mean, at that point, see, Stone will be back, Jaden will be back. Unfortunately, G-Baby's gone. But, hey, Kip can come back and go ahead and, cause problems. Why not? Kip, hear me?
Yeah, it's like they did things. Kip did things for 2 years and still can't really get much SEC recognition. And you're on to talk about why he was a big snub in your mind.
Yeah, it's, there are so many players. he probably didn't have the most tackles. That's probably the biggest thing. Didn't have the most sacks. Those individual statistics are usually important when it comes to that. Even though you can be super impactful without that, they look at the main numbers, and they didn't have it, and that's okay. So for them, it's just, write that down, bulletin board material. Let me make sure they know who my name is in these playoffs. That way we can, talk about hopefully something bigger a little bit later.
So Kip Lewis, where is, I don't know why he's not showing up here.
18th in the SEC in tackles.
So here's the thing, man. I don't understand how College Football Reference doesn't have his name right. Because it's Kip Lewis, Lews. And I wonder if everybody went looking for Kip Lewis and like, we just can't find his stats. And that's why we can't vote for him. No. 72 total tackles. He had 4 sacks. He had a bunch of passes defended. The dude played all over the place and was so good this year, especially down the stretch. I think as our Mason Thomas was out, I think Kip Lewis really stepped his game up as well. Had big plays against Alabama. One was a big sack late in that game and just really helped set the tone for this defense. Like if there's one guy, if you wanted to point to one guy that kind of sets the energy for everybody, it's Kip Lewis. Like he might be kind of the heart and soul of the defense if you're going to point towards one guy, because there's so many guys. But I feel like a lot of guys take their cues from Kip.
They do. And he led the team in tackles. So, he was up there. Him, Owen Heineke was right behind him. I was actually wondering where possibly you'd see like a Kendall Daniels or whatnot, but you didn't get much there either. So in the end, we still finished with the second most players on the all SEC roster, right behind Georgia. And I think it's Texas A&M had 8. So us and Georgia only ones that had double digit. Can't beat that. That tells you just how good the roster is that people thought wasn't very good.
Yeah, it's really good. And it's only going to get better because they cooked in 2026. They're cooking in 2027. And there's a really good chance they bring back a lot of this roster for next season. But they still got to overcome some hate from the SEC officials. Let's talk about something most men don't bring up, but absolutely should. Stress from work, money, life. It doesn't just switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time, Rugiet Ready is designed to help you take back control. Rugiet Ready is a next-generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. Rugiet Ready combines 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 mint that dissolves under your tongue so it absorbs fast. The science behind Rugiet Ready stands out. 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 formula designed for both mental and physical readiness. Most men are ready in about 15 minutes on average, so you can stay present, confident, and in control when the moment is right. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to Rugiet.com/lockedoncollege. That's RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege to get 15% off your order for a limited time. Rugiet Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. Once again, thanks for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there tuning in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Jay, the Oklahoma Sooners had seemingly had to overcome not just the guys that they played on the other side of the ball, but at times some overlooking of things by SEC officials. And our guy John Hoover of All Sooners on SI actually pulled the stats to reflect that, hey, maybe Oklahoma doesn't get as many calls as some of their SEC counterparts.
Nope, they don't. So looking at the penalties that Oklahoma actually had got called on them, 83 penalties on the season, which puts them right at like 10th in the SEC. Averaging 6.9 per game, which that puts them at 10th in the SEC. So Oklahoma got called, right in the middle of the pack when it comes to being called. The ones that didn't get very many calls on them was Georgia and Alabama. So I guess they're just more disciplined. Kentucky's up there too. Shout out to former head coach Mark Stoops.
Yeah.
Former head coach Mark Stoops figured it out. Florida's at what was considered very disciplined as well, but the opposing teams called penalties against them. Oklahoma was the bottom of the barrel. 54 penalties was called against the opponents in the SEC against Oklahoma just this season. 54, 483, 423 yards, 4.5 penalties per game. It's all they had, which is the lowest in the SEC. Right above them at 15th in the conference, Texas. Kind of crazy that the new kids on the block didn't really get very many penalties called in their favor this year. Is this like initiation for the new people? Is that what we're doing? Is this like the first 2 years you're going to get like punked a little bit and we're going to see what's going to happen? I'm confused as to why Oklahoma was so low. Truthfully.
I mean,
you would have thunk there have been more holding calls called based upon how ferocious our defensive line has been, but could be other things.
Well, some of it is this, Jay. And I've noticed it watching the NFL and college football as well, is our guys just don't act. They're not flailing about trying to make big shows out of, oh, look at me, I'm getting held. No, they just go play ball. And unfortunately, that doesn't get rewarded because the officials, they are only drawn to the, oh, hey, look at me, I'm getting held. No, it's the silliness of it. It's the same reason like Micah Parsons, formerly of the Dallas Cowboys, now of the Green Bay Packers, why he doesn't get a whole lot of holding calls, because he's not flopping around like a fish trying to draw the attention to himself that, hey, I'm getting held. No, he's going in attack mode, same like our defensive line. They're playing in attack mode. They're not trying to Oscar their way to a holding call. But the reality is they're getting held a bunch because holding happens on every play. You talk to football guys and holding happens on every play.
Yeah.
But they're getting held to the extent that it prevents them from getting to the quarterback or the running back.
Yeah, the fascinating thing, too, with that is that if you paid attention to the opponents that Oklahoma's played, besides wearing the Unity jerseys, the opposition has a tendency, especially when Oklahoma's on the road, the opposition has a tendency to wear white gloves, which matches perfectly with Oklahoma's jersey. So it's really hard to tell when it comes to penalties and stuff on that. So if Oklahoma adopted a similar, strategy as the opposition and wore gloves to match the opposing team's jersey colors, maybe they may get less calls against them as well. I don't know, but it feels like that's a smart thing to do because I know that in that Tennessee game, they were in dark mode and it was beautiful, but those white gloves were definitely not aesthetically pleasing, but they completely blended into Oklahoma's jerseys. I mean, to the point of our Mason Thomas is literally being pulled and held during the entire sequence of the fumble happening that still bounced in his hands, and he still found a way to throw the dude off of him and run it back for a touchdown. You don't get that very often when a guy looks like they're being held the whole time. Literally, jersey's just like this the entire time, and he still is able to get away and score a touchdown. Granted, that led to a quad situation, but I digress. Maybe Oklahoma needs to take in that strategy too, John. Maybe we need to go ahead and switch things up and start getting some jerseys, some gloves that match everybody else. Maybe in this game against Alabama coming up, we should wear white gloves.
I'm for it. Also, I did not notice that Tennessee was wearing white gloves.
Oh, yeah. They were complaining. Mode. Yes. Fans were complaining like that is so ugly.
Bad.
It's so not, it does not fit the aesthetic. Why are they doing that? And I was like, oh, it's a genius play. They're doing that to match Oklahoma's jerseys. That's why you do it. And it was solid white. You didn't see orange. You didn't really see orange accents or much anything. But if you go back and look at the pictures from the game, you're going to be like, are you serious? It looks gross, but
I hate that.
Like I said,
I hate Tennessee even more now because of that. Not because of the strategy. Like strategy is genius. Just because of the fashion faux pas. It's terrible. It's a terrible look. You had such a great opportunity in that dark mode situation. It looked so good otherwise. And maybe amazing. I just was not paying close enough attention on the TV, but white gloves.
White gloves. And you barely had a little bit of an orange like Nike check on there. So there was a little bit, but for the most part, the aesthetics were not as pleasing as you would have wanted. They were as white as you can imagine with dark mode. Terrible.
Yeah. So Oklahoma, let's go wear our white gloves with our crimson. I think it'd go better because you're wearing white pants. You've got white in the logo on the side of the helmet. Like there's white in your uniform.
Yeah, you should.
So you can wear white gloves. Yeah, you can wear white gloves. That's not a big deal. Bama will probably come out wearing crimson gloves just because it'll blend into Oklahoma's jerseys.
And they wear crimson anyway, so it all goes together at the same time. Together. Yes. Again, like it's just when it's not aesthetically pleasing, like, you know, like I said, that was the complaint from Tennessee fans going into that game. They're like, why are they wearing white gloves with this? And I'm just like, dang it. They're so smart. I hate their guts.
It's clever. Hey, respect to the cleverness, but lack of respect to the fashion.
I hate them for ruining that beautiful fashion setup. So
it's egregious, is what it is.
It very much is. We should have wore black. If we would have wore black gloves, but our players were wearing either crimson or white gloves, we would have just wore black gloves on the defensive line. That would have been awesome to throw everything off too. But no, it was not aesthetically pleasing. We like our Nike glove, our Jordan gloves to be matching our colors. So what else?
As an aside, before we get out of here, Jay, because we've now played Alabama 3 times in the last 14 months. I feel like at some point we've got to come up with some kind of crimson themed trophy between the two sides, you know, because we're going to be playing on a more regular basis. Now it won't be every year because we're not permanent rivals, but
I don't even think we play each other next year.
No, we don't play probably for another 2 or 3 years.
I think it's 2 years. I have to look. I'll find the schedule real quick.
But create some crimson trophy to go back and forth between the two schools. I don't know. I'm a fan of that kind of stuff. I know it's not a traditional rivalry. It's not one that's going to move the needle, but since we're going to play each other, we both got crimson. They're 2 blue blood programs. Yeah. We can start a new tradition.
I mean, you're not wrong. I don't think that that's a bad idea. You know, if you really think about it, it would be cool to have something like that, but yeah, it doesn't feel like, because we're not going to play each other enough. I mean, though it's 3 times in the last 2 years, that they would warrant having some sort of a quote unquote crimson rivalry trophy. So we don't play them in 26. We play them in 27. So they come back to Norman in 27, and then we go to Tuscaloosa in 2029. So yeah, it's the every other at that point, and I'm glad the SEC has decided that it made sense to make sure everybody plays against everyone, because if I'm correct, Georgia has never been to College Station, and Texas A&M has never been to Athens in this entire time that they've been together the last 12 years. But how have you not figured out how to make the scheduling force it to where every other year the guys have to see each other, regardless of you being in different divisions? You got to play the cross division anyway. May as well do every other year, force them to go see each other in some capacity, but it looks like they didn't do that. But they're doing it now, though, because we've got 9 games coming up.
Yep, we do. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports. Go check out his channel, Unfair Sports, over on YouTube. You can follow me at John9Williams and read my work covering the Sooners over at SoonersWire.com. The show is at Locked On Sooners on all of your favorite social media platforms. But until next time, he's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams. We'll talk to you then. Boomer
Sooner.